Hello, everybody. Welcome back to We're Talking Movies. As always, I'm Andrew, joined by Cade. And today we are taking a little trip to 1993 for what at one point was the biggest movie in film history, at least in terms of box office. We are talking about Jurassic Park, directed by Steven Spielberg. Cade, what are some of your pros for one of the most timeless movies of all time?
Well, to start off, first thing I want to highlight is the plot of this movie. What I really like about the plot is that if you really think about it, it's actually a pretty simple plot. And I mean that in the best way possible. Now, I'm someone who usually enjoys deep and complex plots, and while the plot of this movie is pretty simple, it's still very effective too. Because think about it, the movie follows a group of people who travel to this island inhabited by dinosaurs, but after the dinosaurs eventually break loose, the primary goal is to just escape the island. And the reason why it's effective is because the movie does such a great job helping us get attached to these characters and hoping that we'll see them get off the island. And we'll talk about the characters more in a little while, but if you're able to get us invested in the characters and what they're going through, then that's a great way to make the story effective because you get invested with what's happening to them as well.
Yes, yes. And something that this movie really does well, that if we ever cover the sequels, becomes a big issue for me over the course of the franchise, is that sense of childlike wonder that this movie gives. Something that really sells it, in my opinion, that the sequels desperately lack is that sense of just wide-eyed wonder that we've brought, these long extinct creatures back to life and they're actually there in front of you. This amazing feat of, bringing life back. Again, that just sort of like starry-eyed wonder, I think, is one of the things that really just sells this movie. Again, that the sequels desperately miss and try to recapture.
And speaking of that, one thing we do need to highlight about this movie is the mind-blowing effects. To start off, we got to talk about the T-Rex. Whether it's CGI or animatronics, the T-Rex in this movie is just so perfect. I think Spielberg and the entire team did such an incredible job bringing this to life, and the effects for the T-Rex and just all the dinosaurs in general, they still hold up incredibly well to this day, 30 plus years later. In fact, I think the T-Rex looks a lot better than a lot of the stuff that we see in modern films today.
Oh no, they absolutely, absolutely do. And again, the fact that, again, you said this is over 30 years ago, and the fact that the puppets, the animatronics still look completely immaculate to this day is incredible. And yes, the CGI maybe does look a little dated, but again, it's over 30 years later, and it by no means looks bad. In fact, it's quite the opposite. And it does a great job selling both the wide-eyed wonder moments and also the really tense, scary moments. Like that first scene where where the crew encounters the brontosaurus walking next to them. It sells that moment just as well as the animatronics and the puppetry sells the T-Rex eye looking through the Jeep window and all the tension in that scene.
Yeah, that scene in particular, when the T-Rex attacks, that is such a beautifully crafted scene, and it does such a perfect job building suspense. In fact, Andrew, here's a question. Would you argue that that's one of the best moments in the history of cinema?
I would. I genuinely would. Just because it's so tense. It's perfectly shot. It's perfectly captured. It's got the perfect setting here of that dark, stormy night. It's got amazing sound effects. It's acted well. It's got a good payoff. Yeah, there's a reason why if you ever see compilations of best moments in cinema, that scene of the T-Rex looking through the window and the pupil tightening seems to always make it into those kind of compilations.
Yeah, it does. And apart from the T-Rex, the other dinosaurs in this movie that we see are also fantastic. The raptors are great. The brontosaurus looks awesome. I also really love the animatronic Triceratops. Everything when it comes to the effects in this movie are just so impressive. So yeah, I think it'll always be a timeless classic because of that.
This is just a very good movie. And another aspect of this movie that makes it so good, we need to talk about the characters in this movie.
Yes.
And in particular, I don't know what it is about Steven Spielberg, but the man seems to have this almost superhuman ability to direct trios of characters and kids. And the fact that this movie has both really shows off his talent. Let's talk about trios first, whether it's Indiana Jones, Jaws, Saving Private Ryan, etc. He's really good at like presenting trios of characters. And this one, again, it's no different. Sam Neill, Laura Dern, and Jeff Goldblum. They make a great, great trio as Grant, Ellie, and Malcolm. Grant, the grounded, kind of jaded scientist who's sort of rediscovering the love for his craft. Ellie's this, again, wide-eyed dreamer, getting to experience everything she wanted in life. And then you got Malcolm as this endlessly charming weirdo who somehow makes the line, "That is a big pile of shit," not seem like a terribly written line, which if you kind of think about it, kind of is. And then on top of that, you had big credit to the kids in this movie. Joseph Fifth Mazzello, Ariana Richards as Tim and Lex, two kids who come across as genuinely scared, but still lovable. They're never annoying. I don't know what it is, but Steven Spielberg is just so good at directing these two types of actor performances.
Yeah, he definitely is. And regarding some of the characters specifically, one character I always like is Alan Grant. I love how he's this dedicated paleontologist who's just very knowledgeable, but he also has so much love for dinosaurs. And one of the best parts of his character, in my opinion, is the journey that he has with John Hammond's grandchildren, Lex and Kim. At the beginning of the movie, this guy just hates the thought of being around children, especially when he first starts interacting with Lex and Tim specifically. But as they explore the island more and they have to evade all these dinosaurs, you see him grow as a character through his interactions with these kids, and you can really feel how much he's learned to care about them. So that's one thing that makes him a character that we can root for and get attached to, I think.
Yes, and I think his chemistry with Ellie, I think, is also what helps sell it, is because they are such kind of polar opposites, but they do attract each other and they play off each other really well. And then you got Malcolm kind of playing off of both of them. Obviously, he spends more time with Ellie than he does Grant, but I don't know. He's kind of the wacky eccentric, kind of plays off both of them.
Yeah, and he's also, just talking about Ian Malcolm specifically, he's also, if you think about it, sort of the cynical voice of reason for the group of characters, if you think about it, especially when you go back to the whole, boy, do I hate being right all the time, or, hey, maybe this wasn't such a good idea. He just always has that sort of presence to him. So it is a fun character to have because he's also very charismatic and he brings a lot of energy to the movie as well, I think.
Yes, but he's never overbearing with it that he would be later become in, say, Dominion. And I think it shows how good the chemistry between the three of them is because over the course of the next two movies where they break the trio up, it never works as well. Of course, when they brought the three of them back together for Dominion, and it didn't work either, but we will get to that nightmare some other time. But another pro I need to talk about for this movie. Let's talk about how this movie has an awesome villain death. I think we can all agree Nedry's a total prick in this movie, just unlikable, just slimy weasel. But he got what was coming to him in the end, didn't he?
He did.
And then one other pro I need to bring up, the John Williams score. It's a John Williams score for a Steven Spielberg movie. You know it's going to be good. Much like how Steven Spielberg has this superhuman ability to direct trios or direct kids. Whenever he and John Williams work together, it is magic. And this movie is no exception.
Yeah, I think the partnership between Spielberg and John Williams as director and composer, I think will always be legendary. They've made so many great films together. And you know what? Just like with Jaws, like how we talked about in our review for that, John Williams' score feels just as much of a character in this movie. It really just pulls you into the film as an audience member and makes you feel like you're experiencing everything that these characters are. And with that, as a fan of this movie, would you say that it's one of your favorite John Williams scores of all time?
Well, it's not my all-time favorite because that will forever be the Jaws theme, but this is still an infinitely hummable, iconic theme, in my opinion. It's definitely up there. I would say, for me, it's the Jaws theme, the Indiana Jones theme, and then this.
Yeah, I completely agree. But getting into some of my other pros with this movie, another character that I want to highlight is John Hammond, the founder and owner of Jurassic Park. What I think this movie does really well with John's character is that it portrays him as this very flawed individual. On one hand, you can tell how passionate he is about the recreation of dinosaurs and how it really does feel like his dream, which I think Richard Attenborough captures perfectly with his performance. But on the other hand, he's someone who prioritizes his vision over the safety of others. And you can see that during his interactions with the other characters and also when he invites his grandkids to visit the island, which we'll get into later. But I think a big part of what makes John a memorable character is how flawed he is. And it's nice to see him have this nice little arc throughout the movie, to see him learn about the value of survival and the error in his creation.
Yeah, and from what now mind you, this is one of the few Michael Crichton novels I have actually not read. Yes, I know, shame me down in the comments. From what I understand, though, apparently in the original novel, Hammond was much more of a bad guy, like much more of an out and out villain. But yeah, no, it is nice to see that little arc he goes on where, maybe he starts to realize maybe this was a bad idea. And, maybe I need to take a step back and kind of realize that, yeah, no, this is getting people hurt. So that maybe we shouldn't do this. And again, Richard Attenborough is just endlessly charming as an actor to begin with. Or he's like Jeff Goldblum in that way. He's just got this natural charm about him.
Yeah, absolutely. And one other thing I want to bring up is definitely Steven Spielberg's direction. He just knows how to tell a good story. And like I said before, he knows how to build suspense. He knows how to get us attached to characters. He just knows how to make a movie feel like you're in this living, breathing world. And I honestly don't think anyone but Spielberg could have made this movie as great as it is.
Yeah, no, this is Spielberg at his most Spielberg. The big grand scale with the excellent music and the good acting and the, endless creativity. This is one of the best to ever do it at the peak of his powers.
Yeah, and what I find interesting is that one of the directors who came close to getting the job was actually James Cameron, because he tried to get the job, but Spielberg had just gotten it, I think, a couple hours before him. But you know what? James Cameron even mentioned years later that Spielberg becoming the director was the best thing that could happen because, according to him, he probably would have made the movie more like Aliens, R-rated monster movie. And as much as I enjoy James Cameron's work, I am kind of glad that Spielberg got the job instead of him.
Yeah, I feel like James Cameron still would have done a good job because James Cameron is, again, also a very good director.
Yeah, for sure.
I feel like, again, they would have been closer to what I understand the novels are more like, which is that more darker horror movie aspect. But again, it would have been different. I don't think it would have been bad by any means. Because again, oh, we couldn't get one of the most talented directors of all time. Well, let's get one of the other most talented directors.
Yeah, and despite all our pros, we do have a few cons with this movie. Andrew, do you want to start?
I'm actually going to say no because I really don't have any.
I don't really have many cons with this movie either, and I'm not really bringing anything new to this, but it would have to be some of the decisions that are made by the characters. Now, admittedly, this is a problem with most of the movies in this franchise, but one decision is John Hammond inviting his grandkids to the island. Now, I understand that he wants to fulfill his vision, and safety isn't really his number one priority at this point. But at the same time, I mean, these are your grandkids, and you invited them to an island inhabited by all these dinosaurs when you know that the island isn't completely safe yet.
Yeah, that's not going to win him any Grandfather of the Year awards. I think we can agree on that one.
Yeah, and another decision that has always bothered me every time I watch this movie is when the characters, are in the Jeeps and the T-Rex escapes and just starts attacking, and then Lex starts shining the light that the T-Rex spots. So I know that they're just kids and they don't really know too much about dinosaurs, but regardless of that, you don't think maybe it's not the best idea in the world to shine the light around when there's a massive T-Rex outside that clearly wants to eat you? Really?
Yeah, but if it wasn't again, if this was like an adult character, somebody who knew more about dinosaurs, I'd be probably more annoyed with that decision. But again, it's a kid, so you do have to cut him some slack. It's still not a great decision, but you got to give him a little bit of wiggle room because again, it's a kid.
Okay, I get what you mean. Well, to wrap this up, let's talk about our final score for this movie. Andrew, what is going to be your final score?
For me, this is a 9.25 out of 10. Yeah, don't really have too much to say. This is a universal classic. I love it. Not a huge fan of any of the sequels, which again, we will get to at some point.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm probably going to give this I'll give it a 9 out of 10 because it's a great movie. I only have just few issues with it, but overall, everything else is great. So yeah, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. That's what I would give it.
Well, everybody, thank you all for watching. As always, I'm Andrew. That's been Cade. Please make sure to like and subscribe and follow us on our various socials, and we will see you all again very soon.